Okay.
Okay, great. I am super excited to be here today with my new friend, Dr. Zina Cinker, who I actually met in December when I gave my first TEDx talk. So, Zina was a part of the wonderful roster of incredible women who spoke at this event, and she is a graphene expert. So, she talked to us about how 2D materials will change a 3D world. Zina is former director of the National Graphene Association, and she actually started her own business during quarantine, which is something that I wanted to start off talking to her about because I'm always looking for inspiring stories about people who made the most out of this time. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lily. I'm so excited to be here with you.
So, why don't we begin by talking? I just, like I said before our conversation, rewatched your TED Talk. I loved it. I was even looking at the comments, and one of them, and I completely agree with this for anyone who hasn't seen the TED Talk yet, said how enthusiastic you are about graphene,
Energy.
which is something I honestly knew nothing about before the talk, which is why I found it to be fascinating. And you did such a great job breaking it down in layman's terms. So maybe we could just start talking about your area of expertise, which I'm sure very few people know about.
Sure, absolutely. So I am a graphene scientist. I've done nothing in my career but graphene. But what is graphene, right? So graphene is one atomic layer of carbon. It is the thinnest and strongest material we've ever known. It is, if you think of graphite, which is basically the lead in your pencil that you can write with, if graphite is made of millions and millions of layers of carbon. If you can isolate only one of those layers, that's called graphene. And graphene has many other properties. It's one of the best electrical and heat conductors that we've ever known. It is flexible, it's transparent. It was so significant, its discovery, because it was really truly the first two-dimensional material that we've ever known. And two-dimensional material means that the surface area is so large, it has such a small thickness compared to its surface that it's kind of considered two-dimensional instead of three-dimensional. We're three-dimensional beings. And it was so exciting that it won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2010, only like 6 years after it was first isolated. And then it started from composites to electronics to everything.
Mhm. Yeah, and I remember you had ticked off a couple of facts in your talk, which I thought were fascinating. Which is, it's like as thin as it's 10,000 times thinner than a strand of hair, or something like that. I mean, that's literally how thin it is, right? It was kind of hard to imagine.
Uh-huh. It is true. It is a thin. You cannot get thinner than that. So if you think about you break down things as they get smaller and smaller. You get to the molecules and then you get to atoms. You are not going to physically get smaller than one atom. And this is one atom thick. You're not going to get thinner than this. So the thinnest material we've ever known.
Well, like I said, I felt like you did an amazing job explaining it in the TEDx talk. And then I know that, again, you were the executive director of the National Graphene Association. I had even looked up, previous speaking engagements of yours on YouTube. So you're an expert in your industry. But right after the TEDx talk, after getting off that high, you decided to start a new company, which I mean, it's an interesting time to decide to do that. So maybe we could just jump right in and learn a little bit about what your company does and what made you decide to start it during this kind of intense time.
Good question, right? So, okay, let me start by saying this. What my role previously as running the association, it was a very intense role, and it was nonstop. It was pretty um, time consuming, and also just the responsibility of this. So after a while, I started thinking that, you know what, I really wanted to do something that will be much more of on a global scale with what we were doing, kind of being able to bridge the gap between academia and industry, and being able to enable the growth of material products that are enabled by this material and other two-dimensional materials. And I was really burnt out. When I left, I knew that I had a vision for something global. But to be honest with you, Lily, I didn't even think about it. I left because I thought there was something that I wanted to do, but I also knew that I really needed some time to start thinking about it. So I left my position, I resigned from my role, and it was in January. And I started this few weeks of doing absolutely nothing. When I say nothing, it wasn't like even trying to think about anything. It was me laying down in bed, eating whatever I wanted, gaining 5 or 6 pounds in a few weeks, and watching Real Housewives shows or any, I don't know, home improvement shows. Anything that was, to me, it was low level of engagement, just something that would allow me to just relax. Because as I said, it was something, my previous role was I didn't have really time. Even if I was, I don't know, if it was my anniversary or a birthday or I don't know, we were on a vacation, it was always on. I could not turn anything off. I was always had to be on. So this period, I really took that period to start thinking about things. And as I started thinking about it, I also started thinking, okay, I really need to make a decision. And it was a good timing because I had some things internationally planned, meeting with potential investors, with potential partners, for this to come to fruition. So I had some timeline in front of me, some milestones saying, okay, well, I have time until beginning of February to just relax and not think about it. Mm-hmm. And then as Corona kind of started unfolding, and even in the US, we were not really necessarily kind of getting the whole picture, but we started seeing internationally things were starting to fall apart. Mm-hmm. So that kind of made me think, okay, well, now maybe I have to start thinking about these things. And I started thinking, do I really want to start a business around this time? It is a very uncertain times, right? Do I really want to do this? And it was really an internal battle for me for a long time, and I'm able to share that because a lot of people don't share those struggles of entrepreneurs who start to do something new, how difficult it is to take that step. I started thinking, and I've been fortunate because of the career that I've had, that once I stepped out, there were so many different offers that were kind of on the table that were so attractive, and it was kind of like pulling me apart. I was thinking, okay, uncertain times, do I go for something that looks very attractive, I mean, good on my resume, great paycheck, or do I start going through this thing? And I've had a startup before, and I know how difficult it is. Do I really want to go through the pain of that again? And as it unfolded, I was like, I couldn't make a commitment to myself. Mentally, I was watching my housewife shows. I was just not committing to anything. And then one day I started thinking, you know what? I'm not going to commit to anything, but I'm going to think about a name. Just a name. If I had to start this business with the vision that I've had before, what would be the name? Started thinking about it as that C6. Okay, I got a name. I like the name. And it started me thinking, okay, still not committed. But how about if I just try to sketch a logo? Just start thinking about it. No commitment. Started sketching the logo. I said, I really like that. Okay, well, now let's think about what is the structure of this? Again, no commitment. Then I started talking to potential partners. Again, no commitment. As it started unfolding, it started taking shape, and it started becoming something tangible and concrete. And once that happened, then the appeal of other positions on the table, that kind of weaned off, especially since it was around the time of the quarantines were setting in and kind of international travel was so much more difficult. It kind of allowed me to say, you know what, other options, not an option anymore. I have to focus on this. And once I made that commitment, I kind of likened it to accepting that engagement ring and then signing that piece of paper that says you're married. There are different levels of engagement, right? So once I hit with that level of engagement of a guy, signed the papers, and I said, we're in, it took off. It started just expanding, and we have been extremely busy in the past few months since we started this. And although it is very difficult at this time, but it also allows us to have opportunities to see where are the gaps and what are the things that we can do in this space to help. So that was a long version of it, but yeah, it wasn't easy for me to go in that direction because I knew the challenges of starting a business, but at the same time, around this time, kind of taking some of that temptation away. Mm-hmm. It helped, and we started this.
Well, I love what you're saying about, sort of like your options were kind of narrowed down, and that was what, propelled you to do it. And I also think it's interesting. You're the only person I've ever interviewed, besides one other person I can think of, who she also got like her branding and her marketing together before she had like a fully hatched out plan for the business. That was just how her brain worked, for whatever reason. So I think that's fascinating. Um, yes, I would love to know a little bit about, and I think that's something other people would be curious about, what it has been like starting a business during the time. Maybe, the benefits. I would think that it's a time where you could get maybe people you normally couldn't as easily on the phone, to talk to you. I also would think that it's been a time where, emotions and, anxieties are running higher than ever. So, yeah, maybe we could just talk a little bit about both, because I love that you gave a realistic perspective and said, even though you knew you wanted to do this, you still had that moment of hesitation,
Mhm.
understandably, beforehand.
Absolutely. So we started this as a C6 advanced material firm with the goal of architecting the advanced material ecosystem, which is basically these new materials. It takes a very long time, and it's a very arduous path for them to make it from the lab into the industry. And there are many, many different components involved. So we started this to help with that transition, that process for our businesses. And once the COVID hit, it, the truth is this, it's grim and it's sad, but we are in the innovation field. And when at times of crisis and economical downtimes, two things that most often gets axed is marketing and innovation. So it's a grim path forward for a lot of people in our field, in technology field, and material field. So we started seeing that a lot of the people were coming to us, with problems, a little bit of a panic, problems from, we don't know what to do with our business, we don't know where we're going. Some of the scientific labs, they were uncertain about their funding coming in. Is it the whole situation with the government funding is going to just go to coronavirus and COVID? Is there going to be anything left for our field? How do we restructure our side of science so that maybe we could actually attach ourselves to something like that? So we started seeing this kind of panic a little bit, and people frazzled. They just didn't know what to do. And some of the people were trying to do something. For example, companies that were trying to put graphene or other materials into masks. The government labs are closed. Scientific labs are closed. How do you test those? It's just really some of those components that before we were working together, some of those were out of commission. They were not working anymore. So it was really an uncertain times. But at the same time, I was one day I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and she told me something. She said, "Look, at times like this, there's two things. There are two types of people. Type of people who look at it and say, we don't know what to do. It's too much, and they want to go and take a nap. And then there are people who look at it and get nervous and anxious and say, we need to do something about this. Even if we can't, even if we don't have the structure within our own organization, we have to think bigger." And then I realized, really, that's what is needed. Right now, what is missing in our field is a global coordination. Lily, we realize that 70% of our community is working on masks. And that is a waste of effort and resources. Not everybody can focus on one single product. There are so many other needs that we could look at, diagnostics, antiviral, so many other things that we could be looking at. But there is that vision and strategy and coordination information that's missing. And everybody's doing that in their own little silos, in their own countries, in their own labs. Not a single body is taking the role of saying, what do we do? All of us come to the table, look at this. During that panic time, and some people wanted to take a nap, and some people were saying, oh, we don't know what to do. I started picking up the phone and just calling friends from different countries who were in positions of power and leadership in our field and said, what are you guys doing? And then they said, well, we're doing something in our own, but this coordination thing and global thing is missing. And then they started saying, can you do something about that? And I said, well, let me talk to some other people. Then I started looking around different countries, different places. And then it came together as us actually coming to the table And with this, what I call a spirit of camaraderie, which didn't it existed, but it didn't exist to this extent. We came together instead of this frazzled state. We said, we are the leaders, movers, and shakers in the field. We need to come together, put aside our differences, put aside our competitive nature for a philanthropic mission. Bring our resources, bring our knowledge, share everything, and define a strategy for our advanced materials sector. And that came together, Lily. It was beautiful. We started this conversation, first conversation, me picking up the phone and calling my friends a month ago, resulted in this initiative, Advanced Material Pandemic Task Force, which is what I'm doing every single day right now. And this is, we're going to have a press release coming out tomorrow. Is a coalition of 4 or 5 countries who are coming together, committing to do something about this from our field, and saying, instead of all of us trying to weather this storm, how about we actually take hold of it and say, we are going to use our resources to provide solutions. We might not be doctors, we might be nurses at the front line, but we are scientists, we're advanced material folks, we're going to do our part for this. And this has become this big global initiative that's just building on itself. And it came together from this state of what can we do, and not wanting to do something, to this spirit of let's work together. And out of that came this.
I love that. I think that's amazing. And that has actually been, I think, one of the silver linings during this time is even hearing through various news programs how you put it perfectly, putting aside your differences or your competitive nature to come together for a greater cause. And you should feel so good that you are contributing to the relief effort of what is happening right now in terms of COVID-19. And I'm sure that's what keeps you going, right? I mean, yeah.
It's given me this, truly, it has, and you mentioned what are the challenges of working around this time when we're all at home. You need a purpose, right? And it is difficult to find that purpose because a lot of our work might not be necessarily related to something that is cause-driven. This became a cause for all of us. This became this global cause where it really unified and united our advanced material community. And I became laser focused on this. And throughout that, I learned a lot about myself. You remember in my TEDx talk, I started by saying I wanted to be Bill Gates. So when I was a kid, this for-profit nature of the entrepreneurial activities, so I was always very attractive to me. But little by little, I've actually discovered that I might be more of a nonprofit gal. I might be more of a cause-driven person, which is very difficult because I've 34 years of my life, I've never thought that way. But this has actually helped me look at it and say, apparently it is more important to me to work on a philanthropic mission than it is for me to work on something for profit. So right now at C6, we have allocated the majority of our resources and our time for our partners on this cause. And we're not, it's a pro bono work that we are doing, but I feel so good about it. I feel good waking up in the morning knowing that I'm doing something that's not just good for my field, but it's good for the humankind and the future of humanity.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and you brought up something wonderful, which I didn't even have to ask you about because you just touched on it, but I think it's so important. I believe, especially right now, whether you are, starting a new business like you just did, or you're someone like myself where I'm continuing on with, the craft I've been working on for a long time, having a purpose is what keeps you going. And I know for me, it makes it a lot easier for me to say no to the wrong stuff. I don't know if you find that to be true, but I mean, just especially I think when you work for yourself, I mean, it's so important to keep that focus without being too rigid. And so, I mean, I know for myself, it's like when I have that one purpose, which I can kind of orbit around, it does make it easier to, again, keep on that path.
I agree, and I think this gave us a lot of focus, and it was something that was close to my heart, and I didn't even know what my heart wanted. The fact that I realized that I found something out about myself. that was interesting because, as you mentioned, it kind of gave me something to go towards and build everything around that. And it is important in this time. I really see some people are losing focus, and there are they don't have that thing to wake up for every day, even though it's at some point maybe the interactions at work were something that were giving them a little bit of focus. They're missing that. And maybe this is an opportunity for all of us to find other things about ourselves that we can focus on. You know, we have the time right now. Like I found out something. My husband started working on his art and craft, and I was thinking, well, great, because he's been talking about this for years. And okay, now he has something to focus on, which gives him satisfaction. This is something to look forward to once while he's doing his daily job from work. So I hope that everybody can find that little thing that they can say, okay, now that I'm home, I can actually focus on that. And something that I learned about myself, and it's you brought up what started this thing was me sketching that logo. Some people are stopped and hindered by the weight of this commitment or something that's in front of them, right? They always wanted to learn XYZ, but it's like, oh, too big, or they always wanted to grab a pen and write a short story, but just that weight of that first word, that commitment, that it stops them. And I've learned this about myself, that if I want to do something, I have to take the commitment out of it and I have to just start. I have to grab that piece of paper and I have to put my pen on it. I say, I don't know, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to sketch something. And once you do that first step, other things come to you. So take that first step, whatever it is.
Oh, yes. Well, I love that you said that. And I think that's the key to accomplishing anything is just breaking stuff down into, you know, what I like to call like bite-sized, digestible portions. I think both for yourself and for others. I just have one last question to ask you because this is obviously how you and I met, but I have to ask you about the TEDx Talk because you're only the second person that I have officially interviewed after the fact who, you know, was a part of the same showcase that I was. I'm wondering why you wanted to do it and has it become, you know, a new calling card for you? Because I know for me, I mean, I wasn't even like a fan really of TEDx Talks before, but now I'm always so surprised when I have a conversation with someone, it's like the first thing they bring up.
It was a great experience for me. You know, the most important experience for this was that I give a lot of talks because of kind of the nature of what I do. None of the talks we give are rehearsed to that extent because we go on there, we have slides, and scientists go and you talk about it and you kind of take the story. This was the first time where I realized how difficult acting is because they have to memorize things. And it was hard for me to stick to a script. And the reason why we have to do, and I had to script this, was because the timing is so important, right? It is like you go past this amount of time, TED will not accept this. So we had to stick to that time. And for somebody like me who usually just gets on and I have my notes and I start talking about something, that was really a challenge. But that was also an opportunity for me to really, really tune the message. So I was taking any of the ramblings that normally might go on out of that equation and just focusing on the messaging. And the feedback out of that, it's been good. It's always something great to have on your resume. Is it the end of the road for us? Absolutely not. I mean, this was, it's something for me to point people to when they say, what is graphene? Okay, here. But I've also given other talks where I talk a little more in depth about graphene. But it is good to have different visions of, or different angles to your message, right? So if they want something more general, here I can give them the TEDx kind of say, watch this one. So it's been a good experience. You and I have talked about how I am not quite a fan of women segments for anything. I kind of find that and a little bit of infantilization for women to have categories in that, and but I also understand the need for it. I also understand why people do that. But that was something of a little bit of a struggle for me to actually want to even accept to be a part of something like that. But then I realized that, you know what, the message is more important. So I'm going to do that, to be able to put that message on the table. So I think those were my basically the thoughts that I had around that. What did you think about it?
You know, similar to what you just said, I love what you said about acting because, you know, I have done acting and I remember saying to someone, I don't know how I would have done this had I not had a lot of experience memorizing stuff. I mean, it was really challenging, to say the least, to have to do like what I would call a 20-minute monologue. I also similarly had a little bit of a hard time doing like a women's only event. And I love women. I'm always a huge champion of female empowerment, but I agree. I think because I've worked with men my whole career, I felt strange separating myself from the pack. But I've been amazed afterwards. I was amazed at how well attended it was, how everyone was so excited to be there and, loved talking about their favorite speakers or whatever it was. And then, like I said, I mean, for me, it's become a real calling card. And I agree. I think it's like an amazing thing to have on a resume. So I would say for anyone listening, if you have the opportunity to do one, go for it, right? It's a big time commitment, but I think it's totally worth it.
Yeah, it allows you to tune and hone your message, which is good. We all have a message, a core message, and it allows you to actually be able to communicate that effectively. So great experience. Yes, absolutely. If you have the opportunity to do it, do it. It's fun.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to stop recording now, but I can't thank you enough for your time. And like I said, I love talking to people who have really specialized areas of expertise. So I've, found since I was able to meet you, since you and I spoke together at the TEDx event, learning more about your path to be fascinating. And I know other people will as well. So thank you.
I appreciate it. It was so much fun. I just like talking to you. So it was good. I brought in my tea. So it was like more of an informal coffee between two friends.